listening to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Hi.
Hey.
Well, here is the normal person interview that was supposed to be a month ago and then ended up happening now. And of course, we get into, Sarah and I, why that actually ended up being such a good thing, because something happened between when we were supposed to record it and when we actually did that kind of changed the nature of our conversation so much. And I think made the story way more interesting. So
I figured there was going to be a reason. We would know eventually, and it didn't take long to figure out why. So
you're doing stuff like that. So I'm really excited for people to hear this conversation, because I think I mentioned this to Sarah in the interview, that I've sort of made an effort this year to try to have conversations with people in the normal person capacity that are like more about people in progress or in process on something, rather than, oh, I've reached a nice destination and I've tied a nice little bow on my experience. I am just, not that I don't like stories like that. Every once in a while, that's great. We love a victim to victory
out there.
Yeah, I love a hero's journey story. But the problem is that, like, there's so many parts to the hero's journey, and if you're only focused on the resolution and the conclusion, then you're not giving enough credit to like the other parts that are just as valid. And also, how often are we as people at the destination, quote unquote? Like, is there ever really a destination anyway? That's not really how it works in life. You get to a point and maybe you enjoy it for a little bit, and then inevitably, because you're human, you're on to the next thing. And there's more stuff that you want, and the cycle starts over again. And so I wanted to talk to more people who are like, yeah, I know what I want and I'm working toward it, and I don't know what's going to happen next, but like, here's how I'm processing that, and here's my attitude about that. I feel like that's really helpful. So, and this conversation is such a good example of the ups and downs that can transpire on your journey to getting something that you want, and how you can maintain a really good grounded outlook on life, no matter what's going on around you. Sarah's done such a good job of that amidst like a lot of turmoil and stress and, surprise things happening that she wasn't expecting. So I'm excited for you guys to learn from her.
Well, I'm excited to listen to this one because, Normal People Interviews is one of the only podcast types that I actually listen to of ours.
It's the only thing in the Clarity on Fire verse that she can stomach is the normal person interviews.
It's just, I just have never gotten over the weirdness of hearing myself talk for.
It's because you're not
an hour at a time.
That's really it.
It's true. But I'll listen to somebody else talk and tell their story. That's fun for me. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Okay. So I gave you her bio. So let's read it to the people.
Okay. Sarah's life story is a rich blend of unexpected twists and turns. Spending many of her formative years overseas as an expat, she developed a love of diverse cultures and people, which led her to seek beauty in the world around her. From immersing herself in the beauty and medical aesthetics industry, to creating one-of-a-kind charcuterie boards that she sold in West Elm, and even working in media and public relations, she's embraced creative and diverse paths. Sarah's career journey has taken her from department and specialty store settings to clinical environments where she's witnessed the transformative power of self-care. Still, despite her past roles in various industries, Sarah's true passion lies in helping others discover their inner and outer beauty while embracing their true identity and living wholeheartedly. With an all-in commitment to relinquishing control and allowing her faith in God to guide her, Sarah's story serves as a beacon of hope for those seeking to navigate life's uncertainties. So, to anyone feeling weary and overwhelmed, take heart. Sarah's experiences demonstrate that with hope, courage, and openness, remarkable transformations are within reach. Dream big. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's had so many experiences. I didn't even know about the charcuterie boards, which is so
that's
fun.
new to you.
No, that's new to me. I love it. She's a real delight. And also she's from Texas and you can hear it in her accent, which is fun.
I love that.
Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Sarah, and we will be back at the end. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. I am grateful to you for being here. You were meant to be our interview for April, and then life happened for me and continues to happen and transpire for me and Kristen. And now you're here, and life is happening for you now. And I'm actually really grateful that you are here in light of that, which we are going to get to.
For sure.
But I'm really happy to have you here, and I'm excited for people to hear your story because, to be quite frank, one of my goals for this year with my normal person interviews was to talk to more people who were in the midst of their transformation or their journey, and not necessarily at a place where they had a pretty bow to tie on it, because I feel like that's just not indicative of real life. Like the vast majority of real life, our story is constantly unfolding. We're always in the midst of some question or some, confusion or some, step that we're not, when we're not arrived. Like so rarely are we quote unquote arrived.
Sure.
And you are kind of, you have been, and you are now, and we will get back to that, in that place. And I'm really grateful that you're willing to talk and share your journey, even in the midst of it still unfolding, so that you can hopefully be super relatable to people who are going through the exact same thing.
Totally. I find that it's cathartic to talk about it. And then I find that when I do, just in different circles, there's so many people who can relate. To just being in this, in the process, right? So, in the process of working towards this vision that you have, and as you're working through it, it starts to come together, but it's just putting one foot in front of the other, and it starts to develop. So I'm happy to talk about it for sure.
So, okay, let's do what I typically do when I'm talking to a normal person. Is I like to kind of rewind to a certain point and have you catch us up to speed wherever you feel like the rewind point is, and then we can press play on especially where you were leading up to you and I meeting, because there was clearly an impetus for you.
Yes.
For you and I starting to work together. And so I kind of want to know what your mentality was and what you were going through at that point. And then we'll go from there.
You got it. Okay. So I cut my teeth in the beauty and medical aesthetics world. That's where I'd spent the bulk of my career. And I was passionate about it. There were a lot of aspects that I loved. I'd worn training and education hats, as well as sales, and just about everything in between. And yet, a few years ago, I don't know, I finally made the decision to move on. I wanted to do something else. At least I wanted to do something outside of high pressured sales, because that had become my world. And I just realized I felt like I was unrecognizable anymore. I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. I was just, you become part of the cog, right? You become part of this machine, and you're just I don't know, it was a rat race. And then when I would stop and pull back, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in my late 40s. I still want to get married, maybe have children. And where would that even fit in this life, right? And so I started exploring like what that might look like. But when you really pigeonholed yourself into a particular career and certain types of roles, it's like, how am I going to reinvent myself at this point? And so, I just started considering some different options. And that was in May of 21. And I wore a couple of hats over the next couple of years, trying to figure out what that would look like. And thankfully, I had some friends who have a very successful marketing, like integrated marketing and PR media relations studio in the city that I'm in. And they were like, hey, until you kind of figure out where you want to land, why don't you come here and just work for us? We'll put you on contract. So what began as just doing some contractual hours with them and with client relations, et cetera, turned into a part-time job, then a full-time job, but making, I would say, maybe a third of what I normally did. And also just like, not really in line with what I wanted. It was just like what you refer to as a bridge job, right? While I was trying to figure things out. And at some point it just became untenable. I was working more hours, making a third of what I usually made, not great benefits. And honestly, I was concerned about what it might do with my friendships with the people that I was working with, because they're some of my dearest friends. And I really valued that. So all of that led up to me kind of having this existential crisis, midlife crisis, and going, oh my gosh, okay, I got to figure something out here. And I've been listening to your podcast for years. I'd even done like a short course a while back, like I think it was 2016. And so that prompted me to reach out. And then you and I, we had that discovery call. And that discovery call led to, should I do the 6 months or I think it was like 6 sessions versus 12. And ultimately we landed on coaching. And it all happened to coincide with my faith walk. I've been a Christian my whole life, but during this whole process, it was really, my faith was being reignited as well, because I was just finding that I felt really ungrounded and very uncertain in a lot of things. And that was a touchstone that I felt confident in. And so, we started talking, and then fast forward, here we are. And a lot's transpired between our first chat and now.
Yeah, a lot. Okay. So thank you. That's a great summary. And that first call was back in June of last year. So almost a year ago. Okay. So you, I think, had, as someone who had been in a certain industry and in sales in particular, I think you had a lot of, and because you'd spent so much time, like built a career in a certain industry, like doing particular things and like having a lot of experience on your resume in these areas, I think that you had some fears naturally and like perceived limitations about like what was actually possible for you transition wise, just because I think a lot of us fear like, well, I've gone too far down this path. I can't change now. Like, and I don't want to, I feel like I've gotten pigeonholed. And so I'm kind of curious, like, looking back now, what were some of the things that at that time you were kind of worried about, or that you were fearing, or that were limitations, at least perceived limitations?
Totally. I think, there was someone just owning all of my time, right? So just fear of being micromanaged, fear of working these crazy 50 something 60 something hours a week, traveling extensively for work, and I think also just there's often not a lot of integrity in the type of work that I was doing, and I found that there was to be successful, a lot of my counterparts or competitors were doing unethical things that I just couldn't reconcile. I just couldn't do. And I had yet to do something shady but it was getting to the point where I was like, post COVID, where it's like everything had even shifted more so. And I thought, okay, I'm up, I've got my back against a wall. Like, am I going to have to compromise my morals? Am I going to have to start traveling a lot? Am I going to be micromanaged or all of the above? Right. And so I think I had fears like, what transferable skills do I have to parlay into something else? And is there something else that could work for me? So I think some of those were some of my biggest fears. And yeah, was just those are the ones that really come to mind.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking back at our notes as we're talking too, and one of the things you were like afraid of was that every job in sales sucks, and that I'm going to have to work with a bunch of guys who send dick pics and who cheat on their wives.
Also that, yes.
Also that.
Also that.
And if I wanted to make some sort of big transition, I'd have to get another degree because that's just how the world works. And we just all have these, like this list of perceived. And I don't want to gaslight you or anybody into thinking like these are all in your head, because they're not. Like you're coming to these conclusions for a reason, and you have these fears for a legitimate reason.
Sure.
Yeah, like exactly. You've had past experiences where these things have been true, and yet I think that when we get so bogged down in like believing that this is just how it is, even though, sometimes it is, that's true. And sometimes that is how it is. It's usually not like that 100% of the time. Like almost never is something like that 100% of the time.
Not a rule. It's just,
right.
It's
not a rule.
Yeah. Right.
And if you're acting as if it is a rule, then automatically you shut down a lot of possible options or paths. And that's understandable that we do that, but it's also so limiting because there might actually be a way for us to get what it is we want without having to make like the biggest of transitions, or there might be, plenty of sales jobs that don't necessarily involve having to work with men like that. But if that's what you think it is, then you literally can't even work in sales. So
you're just like, that's not even an option for me because like, this has happened. And, it becomes like this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It's like, well, because this happened before, it's going to happen again, or, all things are this way. It becomes this whole absolutes, right? There's no gray areas. It's like, everything's black and white. And you just, you really become a prisoner in your own mind.
So I think, so a lot of coaching that we did and that I do in general has to do with like, can we like soften our perspective on that? And can we just like open our mind to the idea that there might be a way to get what you want that like you can't envision right now, or that might actually come in a different package than you imagined, or that might not involve you needing to make as huge of a change as you think you need to make. And that, that's a huge muscle. Talking about like kind of building faith, that's part of working the faith muscle is, can I just like set some of my preconceived notions and limiting beliefs aside long enough to just explore possibilities and see what might be out there. And like, also long enough to just be honest about what it is I actually want without immediately shutting it down and saying, well, that's not possible, so I'm not even going to talk about it. Right? Like we have to be able to like open our mind enough to be able to admit what we want and explore it as a possibility, which I think you wanted. That's kind of what I want to get into next with you, is like, you wanted things that I think in your mind felt somewhat contradictory to your career in sales. Like you were gravitating toward really needing and wanting a lot more feminine energy in your life. Like,
yes,
right. You wanted more peace. You wanted more ease. You wanted more harmony. You wanted more rest. You wanted more community and wholeheartedness and not having to push yourself so hard and being able to like stick to and keep a sleep schedule and being playful, all of these things that are like very, very feminine and very good for your soul that I feel like on paper do not at all correlate to a career in sales, which is very traditionally masculine.
You said it. Yeah, like that's when I said I didn't even recognize myself anymore. I thought, I'm in an industry and a type of sales role where anything divinely feminine, anything that is perceived softer or intuitive is not encouraged. It is it's very cutthroat. It's very practical, analytical, all of these things. Not that women can't embody those qualities, but the traditional feminine qualities were not celebrated, and I was finding that those were slipping away from me. And I thought, gee, I feel like that there's a correlation between that and me also being single and not attracting the kind of partner that I want, because I'm not operating in feminine energy. I'm out there. And I hate these terms. Like when someone like younger women I would work with would be like, we want to be just like you and Day. Like you're a hustler. You're a boss babe. You're a, lady boss. And I'm like, my skin would like crawl. Because I was like, oh, no, don't say that. And like, don't take my path, right? Don't take my path. Like, I would love to redo this. I would love to do this over, have a do-over. But I was just like, I was so far in, I felt like I'd been indoctrinated and I didn't see another way. But yes, I craved all the things that you said. Those were those core desire feelings that I really identified as drivers for me of where, things that were really important, and yet they didn't align with how I was, living my days. And so there was a disconnect.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, let's take not a pause and not a tangent because it's all really relevant. But I want to talk about like, I want to actually go through this list. And I want people to stick with us on this because this is going to sound boring, but it's actually going to be fascinating for the people who are going to listen to this, I think. I want to actually list out some of the non-negotiables that you and I came up with for what you were looking for. Like after we got clear on the kind of lifestyle you wanted to be living, which was far more playful and, more ease and more flow and more balance and more rest and all of that. And somehow, you needed a career or a transition from the sales and the PR that you'd been doing, into some kind of a job. And you were, I think, pretty open at that point to what it would look like that met like some core needs of yours. And this is a phase that I take most people through in coaching, where once we get clear on like, what's the vision for the kind of life that you want to lead, and not really just on the grand scale, but like on the day-to-day level. Like I want to hear about like, how do you want to spend your time and your day and what's really important to you? And so we did get clear on that. And then typically the next step is, all right, then what I want is for us to come up with a list of like, it's usually 10-ish, yours is about 15 things that are Hey, I love detail. And I think I'm going to literally read all of these because I want to inspire people to come up with their own list. I think that's really important. But a list of core needs that must be met in order for you to thrive in a job and in a job environment. And so I sort of give this preamble to everybody when I'm coaching them, because I think that a lot of the time when you ask someone to make a list of here's what I need in a job, they're just really like covering the most basic of basic needs. They're like, if I made 70 grand a year at this job, that would cover all of my bills. And I'm like, no, that may help you survive, right? Like that may be adequate to your survival, but probably
not thriving.
Exactly. Right. And so there's a very different number from surviving to thriving. And I want to hear, like, what is the least amount of money you could make and still feel like you are thriving? Now, we can still aim higher than that, but we do need to know, what is it that you would be satisfied with? That, even if you made that amount of money, you would not feel any resentment and you would feel perfectly content. And if you made more, oh my God, great. But if you made less than that, you would probably not feel super content. Like, that's the sort of baseline. And I ask people to come up with that for everything, not just money, but like, well, we're going to go through some examples, but like with your schedule and with your PTO and,
right.
Benefits and the kind of team you work with and travel and all of these a lot of them are tangible and some are intangible, but still important to get clear on and to be able to write down. So,
Totally.
let's go through the list of things that you came up with. Okay.
I can't wait.
And these are in no particular order. Okay. So it's not like just because it's number one, it's the most important. These are just sort of the order in which you kind of came up with that. So we've got to start, no micromanaging. You are seeking a supportive culture with leadership that's both encouraging and nurturing. I mean, I don't know that we need to get into each and every one of these because some of these are just like so painfully obvious that like they're important. But I think on some of these things, we really think, oh, it would be nice to have a boss who's nurturing and encouraging. But like, I do think that for most of us, that's kind of key to thriving. And
it's a must-have and not a nice to have. But like, we've convinced ourselves sometimes that it's like, well, that may be the shit sandwich that I have to eat here. I may not that may not work out for me. And it's like, no, you're going to be spending an inordinate amount of time with this person or these people. So I think that's huge. It's huge.
So, okay. Number 2 is I prefer a fully remote or hybrid work setup with my office being at home. This is so critical. Like, every person has extreme preferences on the ratio of like hybrid to remote to being in the office. And if you sacrifice on this and you say, sure, I'll go work in an office 5 days a week, even though I really get drained by that, then you're going to be resentful tomorrow. And it's going to be incredibly draining and hard for you to keep doing a job. And so to honor your need for like, I need a certain balance. And for some people, it's like literally fully remote. I can't do anything else. That's allowed. I mean, unless you are desperate for a job and you just need to survive. I understand why people sometimes take something that is not aligned with them because they've got to survive and respect if that's where they're at. That's what you got to do. It's what you got to do. But if you're in a position where you can have some luxury of choice, then not negotiating on that is so important.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just because that during my bridge job, that was hybrid, but mostly in an office 3 days a week and then 2 days at home. And that was hard for me. I mean, I'm 47 years old and I've spent, I would say, 9/10 of my career remote. Right.
Yeah.
So then it's like, I will say that it was cool to go into an office and see people and be part of like, have that kind of touchstone and that culture, but it was foreign to me and I found it very distracting and hard to focus, but also it just was not aligned with me it just wasn't aligned with me and my preferences or my personality. So that was huge. That was a huge part of what I was looking for.
And so your next one was related to that, which was, I'm not interested in a desk job where I have to report to a physical office building more than 2 to 3 days a week, though I would go into an office for the right job. So you're the kind of person who likes to be somewhat on the go. And so having a job where like you literally have to sit at the desk from 9 to 5 all day is not for you.
Oh no, I think I would have to be put on like a respirator. Like I
You have to be drugged to get to stay.
Be drugged. They'd have to offer like office massages every day and I'd have to be sedated on like, Valium or something. But yeah, that's just not for me. I mean, I know that that's a comfort zone for others. They can't work from home, and when I say working remotely, having been in sales, there's the time, that I prep at home or that I download at home, but the rest is in the field in front of people, right? So it's kind of being on the go, and that's something that I do enjoy about sales. I do like the no day is ever the same and always being, change of scenery, change of environment, but then back to home base where I can get situated here in my home office.
Okay. I'm just going to run through a couple of the next ones. You wanted a minimum of 3 weeks PTO, totally fair. No commuting. If you were to go into an office, like on a hybrid kind of a basis or something, you didn't want to have to commute more than 20 minutes one way, totally fair. Not open to, I love this, not open to a performance-driven, fast-paced, high-pressure environment. Amen.
Woo. Yeah.
Like that right there just screams toxic masculine environment where the results matter more than the people. And we're going to treat you accordingly.
And of course, there have to be like, there have to be metrics, right? For any job that you do.
Sure.
But when it's just like, at all costs, we must do this. And it's
exactly.
Like, that is, and that is really what we see a lot in the world right now. And it's just, it makes people, well, that's why burnout is at an all-time high, right? People are just like, they can't, you don't feel valued, and you just, you don't have a voice really. Just get it done. Just get it done and do more, right? And that is, it breaks your spirit, right? And you go from something that you loved and you were passionate about to burnout. At least in my case, that's what had happened.
Okay, so I want to go down the rabbit hole on each of these, and I'm trying not to for the sake of time. So we've got no nights and weekends, except for you're open for if there was a couple of occasions throughout the year that called for it, okay. But as a rule, absolutely not. Again, completely fair. But
totally.
But I understand why you need to specify that, because in the kind of work you've done, that has been a thing where there was not a lot of boundaries. And it was, it's necessary to carve that out.
Events. Yes, I have to put that down, because otherwise it could be tons of eventing and parties and commitments and etc. And then your workday doesn't really end, and then you're getting home and scrambling, and whether that's to get a healthy meal or a workout in, or to take care of your pets, or just have a social life, or to pick up around the house or do laundry, whatever it is. When you're literally going from dusk till dawn, it doesn't leave a lot of room for wholehearted living, as you touched on earlier, which was important to me, and just balance, right? So, nights and weekends, except for the occasional thing, was off the table for me. I was putting my foot down on that for sure.
You also said great health insurance. Great. A maximum of 30% travel, and only that much for a dream job role. A role with light admin and few technical skills required. That's so important. You're just, you're not a number cruncher. You're not
no,
not a data entry person. Yeah.
I'm very good, face to face. I'm very good at coming up with strategy and relationship building and communications, etc. But as far as all of what you said, that just I like to say I was told there'd be no math here. I've been in sales, I totally can do it. I get it. At the end of the day, I don't want someone who's I want to see this report cranked out 10 different ways, and let's slice it this way and do it this way, that way. It's that may work for some people, and that's fine, but that's not me. And so up front, I like to be very clear about that I'll get the job done and I'll do it well, but that approach for me, it just doesn't it doesn't jive.
Yeah. Fair. I mean, it doesn't for me either. Okay, let me run through the rest of these. No early mornings that start before 9 a.m. with occasional exceptions. Not an early bird, and that's fine.
Yeah.
No time or location tracking, like for doctor's appointments, taking dogs out. Like the vibe you were going for was like, I don't want to have to be fearful that like my time is being monitored. I want to be trusted and supported. And if I need to go to the doctor or take care of my dogs, no one's going to be breathing down my neck or punishing me or caring that I'm doing that.
Yes, because at the end of the day, I mean, like I said, I mean, I'm 47, 48 next week. Like, if you don't think I can do the job, like, don't take me on. But I certainly don't need another parent in my life. In fact, my parents are my friends, right? So, like,
Yeah.
I don't need a parent at this age. And so, if I, you know, there needs to be a level of trust there. And yeah, that was something I felt strongly about.
And I think most people probably agree with you. And I think a lot of people we'll get to this, like doubt whether or not that's possible. But let's round out our list. Emotionally intelligent coworkers who value holistic health, mindfulness, and authenticity. I mean, I couldn't have said it better than that. And
Hallelujah.
a balance of masculine and feminine energy and a mix of male and female coworkers. So,
Yes.
and also, of course, like we didn't talk about it, but I mentioned it up front that, of course, we also got clear on like how much money you want to make, what's our bar, and you knew that too.
Yes.
So, I think a lot of people, if I'm making an educated guess, I think a lot of people hear a list like that, and you might have, after you wrote that list, wondered, man, is it possible to check all of these boxes in one place? And I think a lot of the reason that we end up taking something or settling for something that's not aligned with our core needs and our like basic desires is because we just genuinely don't believe it's possible to have all of those needs met in one place. And I guess I'll bring up what I think I said this in one of my normal person interviews earlier this year. I think with Kayla, if I'm not mistaken, for those who want to go back and listen to that one, that I actually think that you're more likely to get these needs met in a health, like, well, let me put it this way. When an environment is healthy, a lot of these things are kind of become givens because,
Agreed.
right, they're like emotionally mature people and they're trusting. And so therefore, like, they're not going to be micromanaging you, and they are going to be reasonable about boundaries and not scheduling you on weekends. And they're not going to expect you to be in the office like from 9 to 5 all the time if that doesn't really make sense. And they're not going to track your time or your energy and what you're doing every second of the day. And like, they're going to pay you decently because they respect your humanity, and they're going to give you decent time off. Like, to me, this all kind of, you can find them in one place. If that place and that culture is a healthy environment, it's more likely you would find them together.
Right. Exactly. Like the kind of people who are going to be part of an organization, who are going to be in leadership and setting those parameters, they're really kind of setting the tone, right? And like you said, many of those things go hand in hand. And yet, if you haven't experienced that, if you've only had little bits and pieces, or it's this pie in the sky dream you think you have, it's hard to visualize that it's possible. So you can make this list and then go, all right, that was a fun exercise, but is it really out there? So, but then sometimes you see that it is, and that's the icing on the cake, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I love that you said that you see those things come together. It makes sense. It makes sense that in a lot of ways that those different things are important to the same type of people.
Mm-hmm. So when you wrote this list, it was early August of last year, and you were on a deadline. Given that, like, your resources were limited, like, you did need a job. Like, remind me of what, because I believe you, like, kind of declared out loud, like, I need something by X date. or else like things are going to get real dicey for me.
Correct. So I had said, made that list in August. I had said, I need something by the end of September to be starting. I need to have accepted an offer to be starting in October because I'm going to be down to a certain amount of savings. And, thankfully throughout my sales career, I had fortunately made a good bit of money, but I had bought a house and put a large down payment on that after leaving my last viable sales job back in 21. And then I had been working for some friends at a job making a third of what I normally did for 2 years. And part of that, I was just doing it consulting part-time. So I'd gone through a lot, plus home repairs and just life, right? So I really was on a timeline where I needed to have something in place. And, having set aside property taxes and other things for several months ahead, I was down to the wire with looking for a role. And so come September, the end of September, it hadn't happened. And as you know, it rolled over into the new year, and I was kind of at the point where I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to take something, which was my worst nightmare, that I was going to have to just take something. But then I didn't have to just take something. So, yeah.
So, I mean, in such dramatic fashion, I remember you saying so I've just accepted a job offer, and it was literally it was the last day of September or the first day of October or something. The universe, God, came through for you. Of course, at the last minute, because it loves some drama.
Yes. 7:30 the night before I was going to, the next day, I'd already talked to my friend who is my real estate agent from several years ago. The next day I was going to be setting up for him to come take pictures to sell my home, which by the way, I have a 2.3 interest rate from just 2020. And it was just we're never going to have that again. Right. So
right.
It's free money, and I really didn't want to, but it was crazy. And so 7:30 the night before my day. And it wasn't even that I got the offer and I was just I guess I'm going to have to take this. It was an offer, and that job matched everything on the list that you just read.
We were mind blown, you and I.
Mind blown. I was
it checked all the boxes, and the timing was literally down to the wire. And
yes.
it was so impressive. I was so impressed by the universe that day.
It was crazy. And then to have the other two jobs that I was in the final running for, kind of get in a bidding war, right? So that was a nice, little pat on the ego, because I just kind of gotten to the point where I was oh my goodness. And with both of those, they did not match everything on the list. So,
yeah.
But I'd had to open up the possibilities because I was down to the wire, but I'd been praying about things. I had so many friends who were really just standing in the gap for me. And we were all okay, this is gonna, somehow it's all gonna work out. It's all gonna work out. And, in the end, I didn't list the house. I didn't have to cash in a 401k. I didn't have to take one of the jobs that did not meet all the things on the list. I was able to actually accept an offer, and even higher than they listed it for, because there were other people giving me offers. So I actually got above asking the salary ask, which was, yeah,
and you,
it was unbelievable.
And what I like is that, and we'll go into more of the job and what happened next, but you didn't have to get out of sales either. No. I think that you were so not to be corny, but sold on the concept of sales, because it is so historically and understandably, you have that perceived limitation around it being so masculine and just not aligned with your needs and your desires. But this job really did meet all of those desires and core kind of non-negotiables, and was still relevant to the experience that you'd had. And so I
Yeah.
kind of love that because I think sometimes, while I'm totally supportive of people making a complete 180 into a totally different career if that's what they want, I also am, aware, and I've seen it happen enough times that it's actually kind of hard to completely rule out certain industries, like just blanket rule them all out, as if there isn't variance in. I mean, there's so many different places that people need sales professionals, or that where people need to, sell something. And so to
Right.
think that every single, business or organization that needs to sell something is doing it the same way is just probably not right. And for you to have found in ultimately not that much time, like a matter of a few months, an opportunity that aligned with all of the things that you said you wanted, and for it to still be in that realm, to me was like so encouraging that it doesn't always
So
require like a huge life overhaul in order to get your needs met.
it is so true. I mean, and it was like still in the like skin space, like dermatology space, but like in genomics. And honestly, I think I'm an intelligent person, but I didn't even know what genomics was at that point. Right. I was like, wait, what are we talking about? And so being able to pivot where I was more doing like anti-aging, consultative work with, injectables and, cosmeceuticals and like medical grade skincare. This was like early detection screening for melanoma and diagnostics and genomics, and fascinating. And so to see that a lot of my background could parlay into that was encouraging. And then it wasn't even on my radar, right? It wasn't even something that was there. And yet it was a sales role. And yet the hours were great. And the women that I spoke to leading up to it, most of them had families and were active in their children's lives. I mean, what I recall from sales before, a lot of the men and women I knew were either divorced, single parents, on their first or second marriage. And they didn't have time for a lot of stuff because they were completely married to their jobs. And as somebody who was wanting those things, I was like, God, like, please show me there's something out there, because I just didn't see how it could all be reconciled. And yet there it was before me. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that this was possible.
I love it, and I'm going to keep loving it, even though we have a plot twist. So let's talk about, let's talk about the plot twist. The floor is yours.
Okay. So several months into the job, really starting to catch my groove. Could not have had a better manager, just a family guy. He was expecting his third child, just super like supportive, understood, where my background was strong and where I needed support. Really loved my team members and was starting to make inroads in my market. And so last week he was in town visiting. We were out and about, and we just had some really fantastic meetings one day. And the next day I went to pick him up at his hotel, and my phone was blowing up. I was just hearing, I'm on several group texts, and I could hear them just like blowing up, but I'm driving and I couldn't look down. But as I pull up to the hotel, I see his face, and it didn't, the look on his face didn't look good. And as he got in the car, he basically said there was a company-wide HR call, mandatory call, that we all needed to be on in the next hour. And so we kind of set aside our plans for the day and pulled into a Starbucks. And within the matter of an hour, I could see why everybody was texting, because people had started opening FedEx envelopes that had been overnighted to them if they were home. Otherwise, people had gotten a heads up somehow. And the long and the short of it is that this was a startup company in biotech, had been out a little over a handful of years, and they had determined they didn't have enough funding to keep operations going forward. And so we were all given a 60-day notice on that call. some people again had opened up the FedEx envelope and had read it. So I don't know what I would have done if I'd seen that envelope that morning, but mine hadn't arrived. So that was, kind of a gut punch. I got the news the same time my manager got the news as his manager got the news. So it really was a ripple effect that went across the organization. So, so that is, I was only 3 months in, not even, from hire date to training to actually working. So here we are. And it's been a handful of days. I'm still kind of processing everything, but I truly believe, and this is not like some Pollyanna attitude or me just being like, what do you do when life hands you lemons? You make lemonade.
Yeah.
The truth is, after this journey that I've been on and this faith walk and really just seeing how everything is piecing together, I don't think this is a setback. I think it's a setup. I think that my willingness to be open to different types of work, different possibilities, different facets of my line of work and industry, that who knows? I mean, I don't know if it's someone I met during this interview process or during this job or, I don't know. But I feel like there's something connected here that is going to be the key to my breakthrough for the next position that lies ahead. And I can say I'm grateful to have the 60-day lead time to find something, but it was shocking for sure. And I just have to say, if God did it once, he can do it again. And I know that there will be another opportunity. I have to be very open-minded because I don't know what it's going to look like. But if it's anything like what I just stepped away from, then I'm very excited about it.
I really am like so impressed by your attitude about this. And I guess the first thing I want to say, especially to people who are listening to this right now, is that I think it would be really easy to hear this plot twist and to throw your hands up and to go like, okay, well, this is just proof that things are too good to be true and that things don't work out. And that like you literally just went through that whole list and you got this amazing job that checked all of those boxes, but then it didn't work out. And so like, how is this just not proof that things don't work out? And I love that you're like, no, I'm choosing not to see it like that. And I genuinely don't believe that that's actually what's happening, because the alternative is, well, it is, but things like that can happen because it already happened once. And yeah, sometimes things fall through and they don't end up lasting for years. That doesn't mean that it didn't work out, because we don't actually know the point of you having done this job. Like, to your point, maybe it's because without this, you wouldn't have been able to step into whatever is coming next. Like, this is an experience that you kind of had to have, or there are some people that you needed to meet that are going to open doors for you that you couldn't have had otherwise. And to see it as just a step along the same journey and to not be completely devastated by this is, to me, like a really positive commentary on the work that you've done and how trusting you've become of yourself and like a higher power or whatever. And I want to encourage other people to see it, to try to like get on board with the way you're seeing it, rather than the cynic's point of view, which is that, oh, well, clearly good things don't happen. And this is just proof of that everything's too good to be true.
Sure. No, it's, I'll admit, I mean, the first day, I think I was in shock, and my boss was in the car, and it went from, oh, well, we have 2 more days planned to, I think I'm going to catch that flight home to my family. And, me dropping him back off at the airport. And then, I had a full day planned and I still had to finish up what I was doing, and I had a commitment that evening. So then the next day it really kind of sank in. And thankfully that was a Friday, and I was able to kind of work it out of my system and really talk it through with like loved ones and pray about things and honestly kind of wrap my head around it. And then things started to happen in short order, which I was having a hard time getting momentum in anything but aesthetics when you and I first started talking. That's who was reaching out to me because that's where my background was. And even with only a couple of months in this other facet of the industry, I mean, I already have several interviews teed up, but it's because of, and some, the aesthetics ones are knocking on the door, but the ones that are in, let's say, biologics, biotech, as well as like pharma, they're directly related to the connections that I made while interviewing last time with, people that I've worked with in these few short months. Yeah. And so that is already opening doors. And, it's anyone's guess how it's going to go forward from here. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure, right? Like I could be nervous or scared, but I'm really more kind of excited because the past few months, I could have never seen where they were going. And so, like I said, I am choosing to see this as not a setback, but a setup. And I'm thinking, my gosh, it's the end of April. Like, who knows what could happen come summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But I know that this whole process, and in particular these last several months, are key to what lies ahead. There's just those things that you just know, and I just know that, and it's unlike, I think, before, if anyone's ever been through a layoff, which I had years ago, where you're laid off and there's just a few people laid off, or if you've lost a job. This is an organization. So you really have everyone banding together. I mean, the chief commercial officer of our company just sent me a message before you and I got on saying, like, I cannot apologize enough. Like, I didn't, see this coming. I have connections at all these places. Let me know if I can get on the phone and tee up an interview for you. Right. Like,
Wow.
My boss is like already made calls for me. And then they called me today, this company, to interview because one of his old employees is now on that team. And then, you know what I mean? So we're all kind of in this together. I'm making a referral for someone else because they're interviewing with a company where I have connections. So, although it's extremely unfortunate and there's a lot of us affected, it's also like you have this big cheerleading squad and we're all like, hey, let's have a resume workshop, right? Let's all list all of our contacts and see for your particular market who could help who. And so it's for somebody who was craving community, somebody who is craving like wholeheartedness, collaboration. I mean, all of this is like doing my divinely feminine love tank, like filling it up, right? Because there's so much support and encouragement taking place on the my regional level, much less like company wide. So that makes me feel really good.
I'm just, yeah, I love this journey and I love your attitude around it and your excitement rather than fear about it. And it's like, I think that you are just demonstrating for people the power of resilience. That I think a lot of the time we live in fear of something bad happening or the other shoe dropping. Yeah. And I actually think it's good to a degree when the other shoe does drop and when things do happen that we then have to recover from, because it teaches us that we can bounce back and that we don't have to tense up and live in fear of things going wrong. Like, you have had an experience of like it getting down to the wire, literally like the very last day, and yet getting a job offer. And so it's like, now that you know that's possible, it's hard to experience that and forget that and to not then apply it to this situation. Like, if it happened once, then it can happen again.
That's exactly right. It's my testimony, right? It's like, I know what it's like to be in the valley and I know what it's like to be on the mountaintop. And although I've gotten some bad news, I'm still standing on that mountain. And I know that I'll have to come down from it to do something else, but then I'll climb right back up. So it's you've said this phrase before, and I think it's super fun and funny. Like, you got to change your perspectives, right? Because it really is your perspective that will color everything else. I said that once to my sister, didn't even remember saying it. And for Christmas, she gave me a custom sweatshirt and it says change your perspectives and
That's
it's
so
inscribed on
cute.
it. And it's hysterical. It's a little small, so it's a little snug. But I know I'm just like, is this a baby tee? What is this? But it's so true because really, like, your perspective is huge. And resiliency, that word, like, you nailed it, because you see what you're made of and you're like, oh my goodness, like, this is like, I find myself, I'm one of the newer employees and I'm encouraging people who've been there for years because I've just been through it. Right. So I'm literally like, I've just been through the uncertainty and the interviewing and all of the things. And so I'm fresh out of it, and I'm able to, like, I don't know, encourage other people, which really, when you feel like you don't have the answers to things, if you're able to encourage other people, it sounds like real hokey and corny, but it fills you back up. Right. And so, and yeah, I think that, I know it's going to work out for everybody. It's not something we could have foreseen coming, you know?
Hmm. But again, I hope that people will, as one of the takeaways of hopefully many of this conversation, that they'll maybe realize the value of, like, don't hold too, like, tightly to anything. And that's not said in a nihilistic way. Like I don't mean that in a depressing way. I mean that in a, sometimes you're going to have, like, something great happen, and then 2 months later, the rug's going to be pulled out from under you. And it doesn't mean that something great still isn't happening for you. It doesn't mean that you've been, like, forsaken or ignored, or that the universe all of a sudden hates you. It's not necessarily what that means. And to kind of accept, again, not from, like, I just have to accept my fate in a depressing way, but more so to accept that, like, you are going to go through these types of ups and downs in life. Like, inevitably, you're not going to be able to avoid it. It is what it is. And if you can learn to, like, ride the waves, and to not take it personally when things like this happen, and to see it the way that you're seeing it in, okay, I'm going to trust that this is a setup to something even better. And it doesn't mean you're not allowed to have legitimate feelings. Like, if you need to cry about it, if you feel sad, if you are, doubtful, like, there's room for all of the emotions that that getting laid off unexpectedly would create for anybody. And
Totally.
like, to ultimately zoom out and go, okay, I'm going to trust that this is the same journey I've been on this whole time, which is things that work out. I'm always taken care of. Ultimately, like, I trust that there's a point to this, and I'm just going to sit back and see what it is. And I know that if I were to check in with you, in a month or 2 months or 3 months or however long, like, there is going to be a new high point on this journey for you to share. Undoubtedly.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. This is not going to be an Eeyore moment. It's literally like, it's fine. Get it out of your system. Go do whatever you need to do to sort through it. But then move forward, and, I just know that good things lie ahead, and, I just don't know what they are yet, but I wouldn't have known what this was going to look like either. So I choose to believe that, I have this large book that is my life, and there's all these chapters that have been written, but there's a lot of blank pages ahead. And I don't know how they're going to be filled up, but I'm excited to see how the story continues. I don't want to say the story ends, because the next step won't be the end, right?
Yeah.
It'll just be the next chapter. And it's kind of liberating. It's actually really liberating to, like, take the death grip off the pen and just, do my part, but see it, like let it write itself out while I'm doing my part, but being open to what that looks like, and not having this set thing in mind of what it has to look like.
Well, I just want to say thank you again, for coming on and telling your story and for being willing to share it, even though it's not at a place where you feel like you can like tie a bow on it and say, oh, she lived happily ever after. Like, we trust that she is going to continue living happily ever after. But for you to be willing to talk about it while it's still so very much like up in the air and in process, and to share your attitude about it while all of this is still transpiring is so helpful. And I don't feel like it happens enough. Like, we don't really talk about this as a culture enough.
Totally.
So thank you for being willing to do that.
Absolutely. And I think it's so crazy how we were supposed to have this call, let's say a month
that's
ago.
so true.
But we had to change it. And I would have literally been in the throes of the role. So it's only because of the reschedule that this happened 5 days ago. So I think that, again, that is things sorting out how they should have, because there's value in what's transpired since the initial call was scheduled. So I believe that all happened for a reason too.
Me too, exactly, because this ultimately is probably even more valuable of a conversation for you and I to have had and other people to hear than the original one we would have had before this happened. So I know you will keep me posted, and I'm hopeful that in a few months or whenever, because we know that we can't control the timing, but at some point in the near future, you're going to have a good update for all of this.
Exactly. And in the meantime, I'm just like, going to enjoy those lunchtime Pilates classes.
Yeah,
and
do it.
More snuggles with the dogs around the house, and hair in the ponytail, and, no makeup days, and just cherish that for what it is.
Amen. Well, Thank you again, Sarah. Keep us posted, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, I'm sure that was a fantastic story that I'm still looking forward to listening to, since we're recording this in advance. And since we haven't asked you in a little while, and it's one of our favorite things, we would absolutely love if you enjoyed this podcast episode, or really if you just love our podcast and you love hearing us jabber in your ear every week, let us know. Leave us a rating. Really, we love reviews. That's our favorite. And
I'll take anything, though,
But we'll take anything. I know it's easier to just hit that 5-star button. So if that's all you have time for right now, we would love it. And if you have an extra 5 minutes and you want to tell us why you love us, we love to hear that too. And if you don't love us, you don't need to leave a review. You can just move right along and unsubscribe.
You know what annoys me? Not to like open a can of worms at the very end of this episode, but as we're talking about ratings and reviews, I mean, I'm not kidding. Like, every 5 minutes, a new celebrity starts a podcast, right?
I'm sure that statistic is probably accurate.
It's literally probably accurate. And because of just their level of fame or clout or whatever, they get so many listeners and sponsorships right away. Absolutely unwarranted, because most of them are not actually great interviewers or presenters. And they might be great actors or comedians or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily translate to good at podcasting, I don't think. And it doesn't matter, because at least for a time, people will listen to it. I don't think that if you're really bad at it, though, like, you're going to ever see great fame and fortune from podcasting, even if you are a famous person. But
you still might hit the top charts for a little while.
Exactly.
And you still might reach a lot of people at the beginning.
I am annoyed by that, because it's like there's no talent involved, and there's no work effort, and there's no skill at asking people good questions or at just having deep thoughts. And you and I are good at that, and we have worked really hard at that. And I feel like we deserve the recognition and the fame that like B-list people from, or even C or D-list people from like The Bachelor are getting without having worked hard for it. And so if that also rankles you, then give me a rating and a review. That's what I'm
Express
asking.
your frustration
Yeah.
through appreciation of the Clarity on Fire podcast.
Right. Of the work that we actually have done for free for like 6 years and the quality of content we have churned out for that entire time, which is very high in comparison to most famous celebrities' podcasts. And I do like some of them, but not all of them. I've listened to some that I'm like, this is trash. This is terrible.
I'm always checking out the top charts on podcasts, and a lot of the top 10, top 20, even top 100 podcasts are not as great as you would think, considering they're at the very top of the chart. But, you know,
I know.
we're in the I don't know. We're in the organic growth category, so
yeah. As in,
growing by word of mouth.
Unless you give us a rating and review, a lot of people don't even find us. So if that disturbs you the way that it really grinds my gears, then throw us a rating and a review, and at least it will cheer us for the day, and maybe even help a poor lost soul find us as well. And that'll help them a lot more than that stupid person from The Bachelor's, podcast. That's not going to save anyone's life or career. And, we might actually be able to accomplish those things. Not to be dramatic, but it can happen. So, okay, that's all I ask.
It can and does happen. You could be that catalyst.
Yeah. Okay. So we will be back next Friday. With a new side chat, which I have absolutely, if I know what it's about, I have forgotten. So it'll be a surprise to me too, what we talk about.
Bye. See you next week.
Okay, bye.